All right, Ronan MMA, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be my picks and preview video for the unbelievably stacked, overstacked, in fact, card that is UFC Fight Night Rozenstruik versus Almeida. I'm going to start with the first fight of the night, as usual, work my way up. If I get through this one a little quicker than normal, just know that I had a ton of notes written out, and then my computer decided to restart without my consent. And I lost all my notes, so then I had to go back and just off of memory write down what I could remember. I didn't want to go and do all of the research over again because that's just too much. Now, anyways, dude, before we get into it, please like and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. Let's get right into it with the first fight of the night: Jessica Rose Clark versus Tayanara Lisboa. Okay, dude. Jesus. I know I know a lot of people think Jessica Rose Clark is like a total baddie, okay? And I can kind of see it. I just don't really like the face tattoos. But with that being said, though, I'm going to pick her to win, even though she's not very good. Okay, she's 11-8, and she's 35 years old. She's getting up there. Her opponent, though, this lady, making her UFC debut, her last opponent was 1-4. There's a trend here. The combined total of her opponent's records over the last 7 years, which gives her a record of, I think it is 5-2 or 7-2. It's something that is not unbelievably impressive. Okay, 5-2. I was correct. The total record of her combined opponents is 3-6. This lady's fighting absolute nobodies. So I can look at all of the submissions that she's got on her records, and to me, they don't mean much. She's fought a bunch of girls making their debuts. She's fought, as I said, the one who's 1-4, 2-1, records like this. Like, I can't invest in that as of yet. If she goes out there and beats Jessica Rose Clark, then perhaps she will be somebody I look to in the future to pick. But as of right now, I can't see her getting it done. And just for the record, I am not confident in this pick whatsoever because it's Jessica Rose Clark and it's women's MMA. Okay, so I don't know, but I do have to pick Jessica Rose Clark here to get this one done just because of, as I said, like, that lady's record is not great. Even 5-2 is not a great record to have anyways, and then you look at the ladies that she's beaten and it's been over the course of 7 years. So yeah, Jessica Rose Clark, maybe by submission, maybe by decision, who knows, dude. Okay, next fight: Brian Battle versus Gabe Green. I'm gonna go with Brian Battle here. I don't know if the UFC's website is correct yet, or if it's updated or what, but Brian Battle on their website is an underdog, and I think that that's a pretty good underdog pick. Gabe Green is pretty good, I guess, but he wasn't really able to implement his game plan against guys like Ian Garry or D-Rod, who both of these guys, at least at the time, they're not like top level welterweights. Do you know what I mean? And I think that Brian Battle is not a bottom of the barrel guy. I think he's kind of in that mid range, like obviously outside the top 15, but I don't think he's that bad. And I know that he got out grappled in his last fight. To be fair, he's young, and you know, I think that he's going to be able to make improvements, and I think that that's something that he's going to be seriously working on. And even in that fight when he was not on bottom, right, because the guy kept taking him down, he was able to land damage on the feet. I think his striking's a little underrated. It's kind of slow. Like it's like he's throwing change ups constantly. But I think he's underrated, and he's tough as nails. Okay, and Brian Battle has only been subbed once in his entire career, and I think it was like 7 years ago or something like that. So I'm pretty confident that he's going to be able to stay away from submissions the same way he was against his last opponent. I can't remember the guy's name off the top of my head, Fakhretdinov or something like this. One of those dudes, you know what I mean? And yeah, I'm gonna go with Brian Battle here as the underdog. He's not that bad, man. I think he's pretty good. Next fight: Ji Young Kim versus Matty BOHM. Jesus Christ, dude. We need more support on that petition. I guess I'm gonna go with Ji Young Kim here, dude. And she's old and she's lost quite a few. Like, she's on a pretty bad skid, or at the very least, a very like she hasn't been doing very good lately. The only problem is that Matty BOHM's had 2 fights in the UFC, and if I'm not mistaken, she's lost both of them. You know what I mean? She doesn't appear to be that good, whereas this pick is basically who loses to better girls, okay? Because Matty BOHM, or Bomb, however you say it, lost to women who are not very good. Okay, Ji Young Kim, at the very least, has lost to girls who are pretty good. You know what I mean? Like girls' names who you would recognize. And so I think that she'll be able to probably get the job done by decision. Okay. I don't know though. Again, I'm not ever confident in any of the female picks. Next fight, Nathan Levy versus Pete Rodriguez, dude. Oh man. Some of the odds on this card are nuts. I think I'm going to go with Pete Rodriguez here simply because he is a 3-1 underdog or close to it. And again, this is on the UFC's website, so perhaps it's not updated. Something that I would do if I was Pete Rodriguez, just for a little bit of mental warfare, change up the nickname. I don't know if he's got one, but he could. You know, something along the lines of Pete the Solution Rodriguez or something along those lines, just to get in Nathan Levy's head. No, I'm just kidding. But in all honesty, Nathan Levy hasn't, or Levi, I'm not sure how you say his name. It hasn't really impressed me all that much. If I'm being brutally honest, like he's okay. He seems like he's pretty good, but Pete Rodriguez has real heavy hands, and I could absolutely see him. I'm about to sneeze, which is very unfortunate. If the odds were a little bit closer, I think I would lean towards Nathan Levy just because whatever, but the fact that the guy's such a big underdog and he's got the KO power and we know he's got KO power, I'm going to go with him to land on the chin of Nathan Levy and get a KO here. So that is my pick. Pete Rodriguez by final solution. Next fight, Cody Stamann versus Douglas Silva de Andrade. Okay, I'm going to go with Cody Stamann here, although Andrade also wouldn't be another horrible underdog pick, man. They got a lot of underdogs on this card that are a little juicy in terms of monetary value. If the odds were as wide as the previous fight that I just spoke about, I might actually pick Andrade, but I just think that he's 37 years old, at a lower weight class also. Like one of the journalists kept bringing this up at last week's press conference, that the records of guys who are above the age of 35 and whatever, like it's just a young man's game, especially in the lower divisions. And Cody Stamann is actually pretty good. And if you look at the guys that he's lost to, it's not like he's lost to Aljo, Merab, and damn, dude, Said Nurmagomedov, I think. Not bad guys at all. You know what I mean? Obviously, the champion, the number one contender, and Said Nurmagomedov, who's very good. And Said is very good at pulling off that guillotine, even when he's losing. And, we've seen that before. And so I don't think that Andrade is going to be able to submit him. I think he's going to be aware of that. He's not going to stick his neck out there the way that he did against Said Nurmagomedov. And I think that Cody Stamann's going to be able to grind out a decision victory over Douglas Silva de Andrade here. Yeah. Anyways, dude. Next fight. Carl Williams versus Chase Sherman. Jesus Christ, man. I have to go with Carl Williams here. Chase Sherman's lost 5 of his last 6. He's not even that old, which is crazy. Because he seems old. You know what I mean? Because he's been around forever, and he used to be in the UFC and then got cut and had to go do some work outside the UFC. Came back, and he has not been looking great, and he is just, not very good, okay? Carl Williams also showed us in his last fight, I think it was that Polish dude, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but regardless, that he's kind of improved his, I guess, grappling abilities and his takedowns, so I think that he's going to be able to grind this out again, forcing me to watch 18 minutes of him laying on top of him, or I could just take an 18-minute nap, who knows, just resting my eyes, you know what I mean? That's what my grandpa used to say. Chase Sherman has like a female level like win-loss ratio. It is just not good. And as I said, he's already been cut from the UFC once before. I feel like it's probably going to happen again. Maybe we'll see him over at bare knuckle boxing or something like this, but I just don't think that he's going to be able to get this one done. I think Carl Williams will either, as I said, grind out a very boring 15-minute decision where he's laying on top of him as he did to his last opponent, or hopefully it would be nice to see him get a KO. Next fight, Matt Brown versus Court McGee. Jesus Christ, dude, I don't know what the fuck the UFC wants you to do with this one. Like a 42-year-old versus a 38-year-old in the welterweight division. Okay, I was going back and forth for a very long time, but then I just thought about it, and I think that Matt Brown is still, I think Matt Brown's more dangerous than Court McGee is. I think that Matt Brown still has the ability to get finish over guys. You know what I mean? He KO'd Diego Lima, whereas Diego Lima beat Court McGee, and I understand that MMA math doesn't always work like that, but it just shows that the level of he's still able to beat a decent level of competition, I guess. And honestly, that KO that he got over Diego Sanchez with the elbow is hilarious if you put it into the context that Kevin Lee couldn't finish Diego Sanchez. You know what I mean? So Matt Brown is clearly still dangerous. I know he's gray and old and whatever, but he lost. This is another thing. He lost a split decision to Brian Barberena, who we saw finish Robbie Lawler, which shows me that despite Matt Brown being KO'd more than a few times, he has not. I don't think that he's lost his chin, because Brian Barberena hits hard, and if it was a split decision, I would imagine it was a pretty good war. Matt Brown's just a savage, man, and Court McGee has not been doing well as of late. And Matt Brown also is like a 2-1 underdog, so this is definitely worth it. There's no way that I have that much faith in Court McGee to pick him as a 2-1 favorite here. I hope that we see Matt Brown maybe retire or something like that. Like the UFC just announced that Robbie Lawler's last fight will be at, I believe it was UFC 290. I hope we start seeing those guys get out of here, because I don't like when, I understand the business model, guys need to build a name off of them and shit like that, but I don't like watching them get fucked up. So yeah, Matt Brown, don't know how, but I think he'll get it done as the underdog here against Court McGee, the two oldest men in the welterweight division, quite possibly. Next fight, Tim Means versus Alex Morono. This one, for me, is kind of easy, but I guess you never really know, dude. I'm going to go with Alex Morono here. He's good, man. I think he's a little underrated. He kind of goes under the radar a bit. He was beating Santiago Ponzinibbio in many moments in that fight right up until he got finished. He beat Matthew Semmelsberger, who is very good and hits very hard, and kind of got screwed over in his last fight, if we're being honest. He was able to beat Max Griffin, and Tim Means couldn't. And I feel like if you can't beat Max Griffin, then you're just not that good. And I know that Tim Means can pull some shit off every once in a while, but I don't know, man. I think that Alex Morono could potentially get a finish here. Tim Means is almost 40 years old. Okay, he's lost 2 in a row, and I know that Kevin Holland's not bad and whatever, but he's been seriously inconsistent for a very long time, over like the last decade. If you go look at his record from like 2013 and up, it's a couple wins, couple losses. Maybe he'll go on a 3-fight win streak and then he'll drop a couple in a row, and it's just very, very, very inconsistent. So I'm going to go with Alex Morono here to get a KO or TKO finish. I don't know what round, but I think that he gets the job done. Next fight, Carlos Ulberg versus Ihor Potieria, I don't know, the Ukrainian dude, Ihor Potieria. Huge favorites, man. Huge favorite. Carlos Ulberg. He's like the only massive favorite that I feel comfortable picking. Ihor just has not impressed me that much. Do you know what I mean? Like, he beat an old, washed up Shogun. And I'm saying that with all due respect, but it's pretty clear that Shogun's was at the end of his career. He lost his debut also. And Shogun's the only guy he's been able to beat in the UFC, who, as I just said, is old and washed up. I mean, I don't know what else to say, though, man. Carlos Ulberg looks very good. His only losses to Kennedy Nizinchukwu, or whatever the fuck, who we saw in his last fight against Devin Clark just last week, I believe it was, performed very well and show us that he can hurt guys, and he can also submit you if he's hurt you enough. And yeah, I don't, at this point, I don't blame somebody for losing to Nizinchukwu. He looked very good, but he's also bounced back and won 3 in a row since then, which is a good sign. He was also a very good kickboxer. Way more often than not, he gets KO. And the last time out in the first round, what the fuck, dude? I wrote that note retarded, dude. Last time out, he got a KO against a guy who was 13-1. So I'm gonna go with Carlos Ulberg by KO here. I think he gets the job done. Ihor Potieria just has not impressed me enough to pick him over the massive favorite that is Carlos Ulberg, and I think that Carlos Ulberg probably learned from that Nizinchukwu fight, and that's why we've seen him now win 3 in a row. So, next fight, oh my god, we're, okay, Daniel Rodriguez versus Ian Garry. Dude, I swear to god, I wanted to pick Daniel Rodriguez so badly, just because, again, the odds, okay, I don't know if they're updated, but at the time of me looking, Ian Garry's a minus 285, and I don't see any real reason why he should be a 3-1 favorite. I know he's looked good and all that, but I really truly don't believe that he's gonna be like championship material. And D-Rod isn't bad, man. Like, he won that decision over Kevin Lee on like 5 days notice. I know that he got kind of gifted a decision victory against Li Jingliang, and Li Jingliang isn't like the best of strikers, but he's a tough opponent for most people, aside from Hamzat, obviously. But man, D-Rod's lost 2 in a row, and again, I feel like Li Jingliang was robbed. So, kind of a whatever. I know that was a fuck situation for everybody. It wasn't really like either of those guys' fault, but it was unfortunate to see Li Jingliang Li get robbed there, or at least in my opinion. And I think I'm gonna go with Ian Garry here, but I'm gonna be honest, man. I don't think he goes much further. I don't know if I wanted to pick Daniel Rodriguez just because of the odds again, but I didn't want to keep doing that for every fight on this card, because eventually your underdog picks are gonna lose, obviously, right? And Ian Garry did get hurt in his last fight, I think more than once also, but then he was able to bounce back from it and put on a clinic in that 3rd round, eventually getting the finish. So if he can just stay away from the boxing of Daniel Rodriguez, which I think he should be able to do, because he's a pretty lengthy striker who likes to be at range more than he does in the pocket, I think he's going to be able to get the job done. So, but again, this isn't a fight I would fucking bet on. I'll tell you that much, dude. 3-1 favorite, like, no thank you. There's no value in that, but I'm going to go with him in the interest of getting a correct pick. Okay, next fight. Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker. Okay, guys, you can call me a hater all you want. I can't fucking stand Johnny Walker. I don't know what it is about him, man. I just can't stand him. He is so fucking unbelievably cringy to me. And I don't think that he's that good also. Like, I think that there's guys he can look good against. And it seems to be a bit of a trend, too. Like, Misha Serkinov was known for getting weird, crazy submissions. Paul Craig's known for getting, like, pulling off crazy submissions. And he's able to knock those guys out. But the Jamal Hill KO was one of the goofiest fucking things I've ever seen in my life. And I don't know that he's not, I don't know, man. I don't know what it is about him. I just don't like him, and I don't think he's a good fighter. And I think that when Anthony Smith is on his game, he is very good and very underrated. And I know he's a little bit goofy sometimes, and he can be cringe himself. You know what I mean? And I know that he got fucked up by Glover Teixeira also, but I truly do believe that fight, I don't want to fully blame the guy, but James Krause being in the corner of Anthony Smith and his coaching style compared to Mark Montagna, however the fuck you say it, was so wildly different that James Krause was treating Anthony Smith like he was playing UFC 3 or 4 or whatever the fuck. Like, he was just shouting out shit constantly, and Anthony Smith was constantly doing what his corner was telling him to, as opposed to kind of feeling it out and using his own intuition and shit like this. And I think that ultimately contributed to him getting tired, because Glover Teixeira is a very hard guy to finish. Obviously, we've seen the crazy war he had with Yuri Prohaska, and I know he ended up getting finished in that one, but it was a choke basically due to exhaustion. And then he was able to go the full 25 minutes with Jamal Hill, who hits hard, hit him with a bunch of clean head kicks. Like, Glover Teixeira is not a guy you just put away. So if you expend too much energy in the opening couple rounds, he's still there. You know what I mean? And I just think that when Anthony Smith is on, he's on, dude. And I think he's going to be on, because I think that he knows he's close to a title shot, especially at 205. There's not a whole lot of, you know what I mean? There's not a whole lot of shit going on there. And I think that he probably potentially thinks that he'll get a big fight after this. Also, like, the Ankalaev fight to me was very competitive up until that injury happened. He was doing just fine on the feet. He was checking kicks. He was kicking back. He looked good up until the injury happened. It was very unfortunate, but I think he's going to be able to, you know, he kind of said it himself at media day, and he said it in like kind of fucking Michael Chandler-esque ways, like, oh, if you, all these metaphors and similes, if you just give him enough rope, he'll hang himself and shit like this. And it's like, okay, dude, but he also then reiterated, well, I need to be fundamentally sound, totally focused, because he does a bunch of crazy shit, but if you lose focus, he could hit you. If not, you should be fine, which I think is a good estimation of the way that Johnny Walker fights. If you're just fucking, you know what I mean? So I think that Anthony Smith is going to be able to possibly hurt him on the feet, kind of similar to the Ryan Spann situation. Like, these guys that have crazy knockout power or whatever, but aren't very technically sound, there's ways to beat them, and Anthony Smith seems to be able to do that. So the Ryan Spann fight is a great example of that, and I think that he could potentially hurt Johnny Walker on the feet and then maybe sink in a rear naked choke in true Anthony Smith fashion. And this is if the odds have been updated again, I don't know, but at the time I looked, it was a pick'em fight, which I think is okay. That's the fine odds, but I'm going to go with Anthony Smith here. I think he can get the job done. I just don't think that highly of Johnny Walker. I think that there's a certain level of guys he can beat, and then I think there's a certain level of guys that he absolutely cannot, and that's just what I think about him. So anyways, dude, main event time. Jairzinho, what a stacked card, eh? This is a fantastic, I can't wait, dude. Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Jailton Almeida. That was sarcasm if you couldn't fucking tell, dude. Okay. Christ, man, this is another one, dude. The odds makers are fucking blowing my mind. Jailton Almeida hasn't really fought anybody that good, right? Anton Turkalj, the fucking world's biggest cheater, right? We've seen that guy grab fucking cage and gloves more time than I could even count in that fight. And Mark Smith just let it slide the entire time. Is not very good, right? He's beat Parker Porter, who I guess is the GOAT, so I guess that's a good win. And Shamil Abdurakhimov, who's 40 years old. So these are the kind of guys that he's beaten in the UFC now. I am going to pick Jailton Almeida to win. And I would absolutely love it if he would, because then we get some fresh blood at the top of the heavyweight division, and there's a little bit of interest there because it's also a different style that we're not really used to seeing at heavyweight, especially not at the top levels. The only thing is, though, is that Biggie Boy, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, he's okay. Like, I don't know, man. I could see him being able to like counter Jailton Almeida on the feet, and the odds have him as what? The last time I checked, I think the Jailton Almeida's more than a 4-1 favorite, which is fucked. So I'll tell you what, if I wasn't trying to get a correct pick and I was just trying to potentially make some money, I would probably bet on Jairzinho Rozenstruik to get a KO, because I bet the odds would be even crazier for that one, probably like fucking plus 600 or something. And it doesn't seem all that unlikely to me, because Almeida's striking is not great. The good thing about him is unlike guys like a Kron Gracie, who are, you know, a specialist in one specific aspect of mixed martial arts, right, jiu-jitsu, he doesn't have to pull guard and do all this fuck shit to try and get the fight there. He's decent at takedowns, and it kind of reminds me of Damian Maia-esque towards the end of his career, towards the end of his career at middleweight, more specifically. You know, he made it to a certain point without taking guys down, kind of just pulling guard, doing shit like this. And then I think he realized, well, I need to be able to get the fight where I want it. And he started being able to take guys down. And he was very good about taking guys down up against the fence and shit like this. It was something that he evolved in, like recognizing that I can't just be this one-dimensional in terms of jiu-jitsu, because we talked about this with leading up to the Kron Gracie fight. Jiu-jitsu, everybody's consenting. When you go to jiu-jitsu class, everybody's consenting to get on the mats and roll with each other. When you're in a fight, that guy doesn't want to fucking roll with you. You know what I mean? And so it's a little bit trickier to get him to the mat when you have zero takedown abilities and zero striking abilities whatsoever. Now, Jailton Almeida, I know that he's gotten TKOs and things like this, but essentially it comes from ground control. I think that Almeida will be able to get a takedown here. Jairzinho Rozenstruik just hasn't looked that good. He had a few moments in his UFC career where you're like, oh, okay. And he kickboxed against some very good guys like Ben Abdagdoui. I can't remember I hope I said his name correctly. But I used to watch him in Glory. He's a good kickboxer. But we've also then seen him get fucked up by Volkov on the feet, and striking is supposed to be his strong suit. Obviously, he tried to point fight essentially with Francis Ngannou as if that was gonna fucking work. And then who else did he lose to, dude? He's lost to a few guys where it's like, Also, the Alistair Overeem one pissed me off. I'll tell you that much, dude. I don't think they should have stopped that fight. His lip split open. Who gives a fuck? He got dropped and got right back up. You know what I mean? He lost every fucking round in that fight, essentially. 5 seconds left in the fight, he drops him once. The ref stops it because he doesn't like the way his lip looks. Well, Robbie Lawler, when he fought Rory McDonald's lip was fucking hanging off his face. You know what I mean? Like, what are we stopping it for? And And I understand the argument, well, one more punch or something, maybe that chunk would have flew off. But again, there was a couple seconds left in the round. So it wasn't even like he was able to... In my view, he didn't even really beat an old Alistair Overeem. I understand that officially that's what the record says, but, you know, he hasn't been able to beat very good guys. And I think that Almeida will be able to take him down and get a submission. But again, dude, if I was betting this fight just simply to make money and I wasn't making a pick, trying to get a correct prediction, I would probably just throw money on Jairzinho Rozenstruik to get the job done by KO, because there are absolutely opportunities and openings that Jailton Almeida leaves on the feet where a seasoned kickboxer such as Jairzinho Rozenstruik could take advantage of. There's many holes I see in his game, like Kevin Lee. So anyways, dude, that's the end of this one. I apologize if my energy was not the highest, because this card is just so fantastic. I couldn't control myself. Yeah, that's it, dude. That's the end of this video. Like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. I'll see you at the next video. Bye-bye.